Welcome back to the Well House Exorcism. I am your host, Shanna Hayden.
I'm PJ.
Jack.
Yes, we have a special guest. It's not Lauren Ray this time. It is my brother Jack. We need someone with a good Jewish background.
Shalom.
Shalom. So this week we are going to explore the Dybbuk Box, which has made the rounds on Reddit, on eBay, on TV, all over. Movies. Sam Raimi did a movie. A book.
Zach Baggins.
Zach Baggins. Oh my gosh.
Zach Baggins.
Dude, bro, Zach Baggins.
With his best friend, Post Malone. I also didn't know that until my research.
I know, that was something.
Adding on to the Catskill Crone discussion, I did not use any microfiching for this. Thank God. I used Google. So thank you, Google, for once again.
Having to go through microfiche.
That was a full discussion last time with Laura. She loves that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I'm the English major. And the idea of having to use another microfiche, like that is like the 9th level of hell for me. I'm good.
I was going to say, I always liked doing research, but I liked when I could just look it up on the computer and then print out the whole article and read it at my leisure.
Google Scholar has gotten me through my master's and most of my doctorate.
I was going to say, I liked having a university library where if I didn't have the article, I could just request them to go get it for me.
Yes.
I never really used... Again, I have found all the easy ways to do this. As an English teacher, there are many easy ways to do this.
Well,
teachers are the best thieves.
No, Google Scholar's there for a reason.
I was going to say, back then, when I was in college, a lot of...
Back in my day.
Pretty much. Geology articles really weren't on Google Scholar. You had to go and get, someone's doctoral dissertation.
Yes. Yes. I
Shiver of revulsion.
Fun fact, I haven't seen you. So I, on Sunday, actually submitted my outline for my dissertation, actually. My research proposal. Yeah, it was very horrifying. And then I got my grade back today, and it was a 0. I know. So the reason why is, I guess she's getting a little salty with the people in the class because, unlike me, no one else does their work. So she's putting in grades for placeholders, and now she's decided that until you make the corrections she has, which, by the way, mine only has 3 corrections. That's it. That's all mine has, yeah. And it's just stuff she wants me to omit because I'm a little wordy. I'm an English major.
That's fair.
But I have a 0 till I make those corrections, which I find very offensive. So I'm like, I'm sorry. I've never had a 0 on anything in my entire life. But I get what she's doing. But when I first saw, I'm like, I don't need this today. Like, it's been a day. I'm tired. But yeah, so I submitted my my dissertation outline. My research proposal outline. Yay. It's kind of horrifying. Yeah. Whew, thank you, Lord. All right.
Oh, that's right. You didn't have to do an actual research paper in undergrad, did you?
All my research papers.
No, I meant an actual research project, where you had to get approved by a actual...
Like a dissertation?
Yeah, I basically had to do an undergrad dissertation.
Oh, we call them capstone projects.
Yeah, I had to do an actual...
All of my essays are research-based.
Yes, research-based, but I meant where you actually basically had an undergrad dissertation.
Yes.
I had to do that.
We had choices to do conferences and stuff. So I did a training, which is pretty cool. Anyway, we are completely off topic.
I've never done any of that.
Yeah.
And you have
even
master's
in my
degree.
master's.
Well, yours was
the biggest paper I've ever written was 5 pages. Well, no, there was my 12-page capstone project.
I don't think I could only write 12 pages anymore. I don't know what it's like to write so short. And what's terrible is I'm just getting used to APA, and I never thought I'd say that, but I absolutely hate my life because I'm an English teacher. But I have myself, I start questioning myself. Am I doing the MLA correct now with my 8th graders? Because I've been doing this stupid APA for so long.
Just having to do research, that would have been nice. I had to do research and a bunch of actual practical work for mine.
Yep, always, yeah. All mine too.
I actually had to sit
This is not a podcast about research. We got off topic.
We got way off topic.
Maybe we should start one.
I don't think anybody wants to listen to qualitative versus quantitative research. Some people probably do, but me talking about it,
I like qualitative.
That's lazy. Can we not? No, because we're going to get off topic.
Yeah. Okay. Focus.
No. All right.
Dybbuk
So
Box.
this week we are doing the Dybbuk Box, and so we brought Jack on because he
I'm just
identifies
saying this is
as
qualitative
Jewish.
research. This story right here.
Yes, it's research. Anyway,
that middle finger, I felt that.
Good.
oh my
That's the
goodness.
point.
Anyway, so Dybbuk is spelled two different ways, D-Y-B-B-U-K or D-I-B-B-U-K. Doesn't really matter. That's just the spelling. But Jack is our resident.
Hebrew to English doesn't really translate well a lot of the time.
So Jack is here to tell us all about Dybbuks.
Okay. Well, to understand a Dybbuk, there's three main concepts that come out of Judaism and Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism, sort of. The first thing, what a Dybbuk actually
Kabbalah is just a fun word. I'm sorry.
It is. What a Dybbuk actually is, it isn't really analogous to a Christian or Catholic demon. It's not quite the same.
Okay.
What it actually is, Dybbuk actually comes from an old Hebrew word to mean to cling or to cleave.
I found that in my research.
Yes.
I found that.
Yes. Basically what happens is sometimes when a soul is in punishment in the afterlife, which I have to come back to because it'll make more sense, the amount of punishment is too much, or they were so unrepentant that they refuse to be, to atone for what they did. So rather than atone, they separate themselves from the cycle and actually come back into the land of the living and attach to a person.
In Catholicism, we go to purgatory to fix those problems.
Yeah, purgatory doesn't really exist, but I have to come back to why.
It's a Catholic thing.
To really understand it, you have to understand Gehenna and Kafachela.
Watch your language. This is a podcast.
Gehenna is the closest thing to hell, but the thing is, you're not in hell you're not in Gehenna for very long.
Yeah,
the longest you're in Gehenna is a year. Basically, you're punished like crazy for the amount of time, and then your soul is basically brought back, and then you wait a little while and you're actually reincarnated. Because the idea is, especially in Kabbalah, the idea isn't to be it's to build up, for lack of a better word, a lot of good. And when you get enough, then you ascend and you never come back.
So you level up.
In a very real sense, yes, because your bad deeds don't go away. Your good deeds don't go away when you die. Those are actually kept separate, and then you're given a couple of runs to try to get as much good as possible. But for a Dybbuk, the idea is that you're in Gehenna or Kafakela, which is even a deeper part of Gehenna, where you don't have a time.
Where the microfiches are.
It might as well be, because technically Kafakela is you're separated and forced to reincarnate, but you spend centuries before you reincarnate. So you're stuck for centuries away from even God, like the light of God, or even punishment. You're just separated. And so for some souls that are unrepentant, there's, you're basically saying, why am I here? I don't deserve this, so I'm going to go off. And then you come back to the land of the living and attach yourself.
And so they attach themselves to an object. So a Dybbuk box could exist.
Originally, they attach themselves to people.
To people, okay.
Where the Dybbuk box, there's actually a ritual that rabbis have to basically separate the Dybbuk from a person. But then you have to find a way to get rid of it. The ideal thing is to send it to Gehenna so it can be punished and reincarnated, but that isn't always the choice. Sometimes you have to force it stuck into something. And there's a long history, even in the Old Testament, of spirits bound to objects or bound inside objects. So the idea of putting it in a wine cabinet and sealing it with prayers, ritual, and a ritual lock is very correct.
So it could happen, okay.
Yes. Have I seen any rabbi do it? No. Have I heard of a rabbi doing it? No. But for someone who would know enough about Kabbalah or mysticism, it's definitely an option. Because Solomon had a ring that allowed him to command demons in Kabbalah. And so the idea of having something that binds it is absolutely correct.
And the idea of binding things to creatures or supernatural entities to these inanimate objects is a common thing in Christian mythology.
In mythologies throughout the world,
Just last week we had the Corona and the Catskills, and that's the same exact thing.
That's also cultures across the world, across the eons have done that.
Well, that's what Laura mentioned too, is the idea that you kind of imbue that energy on things too. Or if you're really connected to something, maybe you're with it in the afterlife too. So maybe that's why you have a ghost in your house, because of that mirror or something,
And you imprint yourself onto it.
And so as we get further into the story, come back to the idea of a Dybbuk. It's this spirit that clings to people. So when it was in the box, it was nothing, but it was semi-attached to the box because that's where it was bound to.
Yeah.
But as soon as the box was open, the people in its area it was attached to them, which is the guy tells about a story about. Now
all the different people he gave the box to, yeah.
Yes. The only thing is you would still technically have to reseal the box, sort of, not permanently, but so it could go to another person, just because if not, it would attach to you and you'd have to be blessed and exorcised.
Yeah. So I find the whole story interesting now. It originally came out, and I just found it like awesome because it was an interesting story, and it just had so many years and prevalence throughout like eBay and whatnot. But the recent research, with it, I think it's interesting for us. We try to debunk things too, so I have all of it in here for us. But starting off from the beginning, this idea is a guy named Kevin Mannis found this and bought it basically like by accident, if you will, at an estate auction, because there was a lot of stuff that he wanted.
Yeah.
And this kind of came with it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's interesting for my article here. It says Mannis bought a cabinet from an estate sale for a woman originally from Poland who had died at the age of 103. The granddaughter of the deceased was insistent that Kevin take the item after he'd purchased it, after he offered to give it back to her because he figured it had some deep sentimental value. The granddaughter told him that the grandmother kept the box stashed away and would not let anyone open it. Kevin took the item to his furniture refinishing shop and put it in the basement. And what's interesting too, if you listen to the full interview of this, is she goes, "Oh, I see you bought the Dybbuk box," and so Kevin Mannis is Jewish, and he's like, "Oh, I know what a Dybbuk is," but he really didn't believe in it. And so his original idea was to work on the box and then sell it pretty much, or to give it to someone as a gift. And, in an interview with his mother, actually, I think on Paranormal Witness, his mom talked about how, being the mother of Kevin, she's gotten a lot of weird gifts because he's an antique dealer.
Yeah.
But what was really interesting is when he first brought the box home into the basement, or into his job in the basement, it says one day when he left the shop while he went on an errand, he soon got a call from his frantic salesperson that someone was in the shop swearing and smashing things. Mannis returned to the shop to find the lights in the basement broken and the room filled with a stench of cat urine. The employee left and never came back. Now, he did work on the box. He opened it. He found some really cool things inside of it, and he gave it to his mother as a gift. And so I kind of want to talk about the box itself first and what he found in it before we go into what happened to his mom. So, PJ, do you want to take that part away? Talk about it? So the person, the grandmother who owned this, she was a Holocaust survivor. Actually, her name was Havala, and she escaped to Nazi-occupied Poland. So I think it's kind of interesting too that you have that Holocaust connection, because the 1940s were just a hot mess of just terrible, terrible things. But anyway,
and also the other reason, coming back to this idea of whether or not it could or could not be, is when you look at what's in there. There was a lot of tying into Kabbalah, especially. So, if it is real, this woman definitely studied, at least knew a little bit of Kabbalah and this would be a ritual you'd use to bind something that's dangerous. So, that's one point in could this be real? Yes, because this is a pretty close version of what the actual Kabbalah ritual would.
Okay, so in the cabinet, he found 2 wheat pennies dated 1925 and 1928, 2 locks of hair, a dried rosebud, a 4-legged candlestick, a golden wine cup, a granite sculpture inscribed with the Hebrew word shalom, and the Shema, a prayer from Judaism. I don't know, John, if you're familiar with that one, but it was scratched into the back of it.
I just want to say that rosebud. Sorry, I did that.
The Shema is probably, well, I wouldn't say it's analogous directly. It is basically one of the Jewish equivalents to what you would do for the Apostles' Creed or the Lord's Prayer. It is one of the most important prayers. It's probably one of the most
common ones.
Yes. And also something that, in especially Kabbalah and Judaism, words have real power. So if you are binding a dark entity, you would use actual word, the literal word in this case of the divine, because that's the idea. Is that's the reason why they're called the religions of the word. It's literally these words have power.
Yeah,
which is also why they say God spoke the world into existence.
Well, and something else here, too. It says, the granddaughter told me that her grandmother had asked the box be buried with her. However, as such a request was contrary to the rules of an Orthodox Jewish burial, the grandmother's request had not been honored.
Yep.
So I thought that was like, that's how serious the grandmother was. Like, do not open this box.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it also would be very against the orthodoxy, especially if your rabbi had any idea of what it could have been or what this represented. If the rabbi was very aware, I'm actually shocked he didn't be like, I am going to take this for safety.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I mentioned. That, like, if you watch that Paranormal Witness episode that I'm thinking of, that's something that's mentioned like much later. Because the next guy who buys this, like after the college kids, like he is pretty serious with this box. So we have Manus who buys this box, and obviously, just like the Catskill Crown, does not listen to anybody. Takes it back, opens it, finds all the stuff in there,
fiddles with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously releases something because almost immediately you have all these lights exploding. It scared just the bejesus out of his worker who was there, and like she quit. Like she was not polite. She said some nasty things to him.
She also got really lucky because a Dybbuk could have attached to her and not Manus.
Yeah.
He sells it, and then it comes back the next day with a note that says there's a darkness in this cabinet.
But when he gave it to his mom, like he had decided, like he just didn't end up refinishing. He just gave it to his mom, and this part to me like freaks me out, and that's why I feel like when we go into debunking, how do you explain this part away? So PJ, what happens?
He gives it to her on her birthday, and she opens it up and has a stroke, like right then and there in the shop.
Yep. And then when she's getting medical help, she can't talk, of course, because she has a stroke. But she actually spells out hate gift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, definitely not the gift to give to your mom. Yeah. But he does end up giving it to like lots of his family members to watch. He gives it to his girlfriend,
his sister.
Yeah, there's a whole. I mean, who all does he give it to? Like, where's that?
I didn't realize there was an option to take a horribly potentially dangerous haunted item and give it to your siblings, because that seems like excellent payback.
It's like, I don't like you, so here. Yeah. So Kevin took it home. He gave the box to his sister. She kept it for a week and gave it back. He gave it to his brother and his brother's wife, who kept it for 3 days and returned it. The brother said it smelled like jasmine flowers, and his wife said it smelled like of cat urine. Kevin gave it to his girlfriend, who soon asked him to sell it for her. He sold it to a middle-aged couple, and 3 days later found the box sitting in front of his shop with a note saying, "This has a bad darkness." Then he took it home. And then bad stuff started happening again. So, first off, that's my question for you, Jack. Can you give a Dybbuk box to somebody and like say, here you go, here's your present, and would that Dybbuk attach itself to you then? That's what I don't understand, because doesn't it clings to you, the person?
It clings to a person. Normally it clings to a single person, because how it works is it either finds the will to escape, kafachela technically, but Gehenna, it finds the will to escape. It can either be brought in, and that's the other thing is the stories that they said that the one who originally made the Dybbuk box, or made it into the Dybbuk box, I should say, they performed a seance.
Yes. That's actually, yeah. Do you want to tell that backstory of how they... Okay. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So,
Havila was not a good girl.
Havila, again, she knew enough about Kabbalah, so I wouldn't be shocked she did this, because Kabbalah is very much about knowledge. So, the story goes is that, I was going to say it was in 20-something, I think is what she said. She and some friends had a seance, and they were trying to contact somebody, and whatever entity they pulled out was not good. They were using a more ancient, they weren't using a Ouija board, they were actually using like the pendulum style. Yep. And after pulling this out of Gehenna, it attached to her, because she was the one that did it. Now, from that moment, she was its intended target. If she had no knowledge of Kabbalah, it would have been stuck with her until either she died, it completely possessed her, or the rabbi took care of it. But she bound it to a box. And even by opening the box, it's still semi-bound to the box. That's what, especially the clay figure in there with Shalom written on it, that's a version of the golem, which isn't technically used the name of God or the name of life. And the prayer in there, and the locks of hair, basically it it would have been more bound to the box, but as soon as it was open, anyone near the box could have become its prey. Mm-hmm. That being said, I would say it's more likely that after that point it would have stuck to Manus and only Manus. But it's not inconceivable for it to be more bound to the box, because I don't know how good of a ritual she did in Kabbalah to get it bound to the box.
Well, that's something that they talk about in one of the articles, is that after the box trades hands so many times, I think it's Zach Baggins, it might have been the guy before him, when they opened the box, they heard a voice whispering Kevin.
Yeah, that was Zach Baggins.
So
that would be, yes.
Even though it traveled with the box, it was still thinking of him.
Well,
so
more
romantic.
like that's the person it was bound to. So yes, that actually is very common. Because like I said, at that point, then the ritual was enough that it bound it to the box, but not enough that it was only bound to the box.
Yeah.
But I just find it interesting that people keep smelling like cat urine, but one person smells jasmine. It's so different, but...
Yes, and that can...
Their olfactory senses are broken, that's all.
COVID before COVID was a thing, I guess.
Also... I don't know the person that smelled it.
Delta.
They dealt it.
I was going to say, because of the way this works, technically, it's just an assault of the senses. So, if that person, and this is completely possible, but not normal, if that person is not a particularly good person, a Dybbuk would have no reason to attach to them. Because what's the point of attaching to somebody if they're going to end up in Gehen anyway? So... I think he might have found out that person could have been could have been a bad person, or it could be that the Dybbuk itself had no interest in attaching to them. Mm-hmm. Basically, the stench of cat urine, it would be more akin to like, oh, I'm on this thing's radar, more than just the natural scent of it. Because a Dybbuk is somewhat a perversion, so your body and mind will immediately try to see it as perverse. And... for the average person, cat urine is an awful smell that should not be smelled.
Ugh.
Yes.
So it's interesting. After Kevin exhausts all of his options and gives everyone this gift, he says he took it home because he gave up. But as while he had the box at home, he began to have nightmares in which he was walking with a good friend, and when he looked into the friend's eyes, he saw something evil looking back. The friend turned into a gruesome demonic hag that proceeded to beat him, and he'd awake with bruises and marks on his body. This is the discussion I have all the time. If things are hurting you, you probably want to go talk to a priest, or in this case, your rabbi.
Yeah.
But it's just why do people not do that? That's a question I have.
That is one of the questions I've had about this, is because one of the things he said is when the woman says, in the one interview, the young woman says, oh, you bought the Dybbuk box. And he goes, I didn't think about it. I knew what a Dybbuk was, but I didn't really think about it.
It's when you say, when you're a kid, oh, the Dybbuk gets you if you're out good, oh, boogeyman. Yeah.
And in a sense, it kind of is. But if you are a practicing, Jew, or if you know any Jewish lore, you hear the name Dybbuk and you should immediately be worried, because that is not a good thing.
No. And I guess if you're ambivalent in your religion, maybe you're kind of the Dybbuk box. Yeah, I bought this tombstone over here too. It could be
just
kind of
there are
funny.
Christians who you can say, oh,
bought the demon house.
Yeah, and they're like, oh yeah, demon, whatever.
So I guess, but it's just
But as soon as you get a little bit of bad, I would probably... Now, the fact he has a habit of giving weird gifts to his mom that's very funny to me. But so the idea of, oh, this is a very antique and very well made wine cabinet.
Yeah.
But the idea of giving this antique wine cabinet would be a fairly nice gift. Especially because when you pay attention, it's a very, very well made one.
It is it's kind of cool how it opens up too. You see, in the video, and everything, when you open it, it kind of it pops open on its own. It's really cool. But then everyone had the exact same dream too. When he says his brother and his sister came over to visit, and so his wife. They had the same dream, and then he started seeing shadow creatures in his home and around him, in this peripheral vision.
That's exactly when I would say this is absolutely a Dybbuk, and because that's kind of one of the things that comes up all the time in Dybbuk lore is that you'll always see it as when your eyes are closed but your mind is awake, i.e. when you're dreaming. You'll see it for what it is, someone that clings to you. So it's a dear friend that is grabbing onto me, is holding onto me tight. When you're awake, you'll see it as more something shadowy, this is why this is one of my favorite depictions.
Oh, he's just giving him a hug. It's fine. We can't show it to our viewers, but it's a person who is sitting and there's like something behind you
We can
hugging
post it
on.
to our Facebook page.
If you need to look it up, it's actually from a video game, Shin Megami Tensei Strange Journey. Their version of the Dybbuk is probably one of the closest I've seen depiction-wise.
Send me the picture and I'll put it on the Facebook page.
Okay.
But then, like, what's interesting too is he starts and having this nightmare. Like at 4:30 in the morning, he wakes up and he feels like a breathing on his neck. He smells that cat, or actually, he smells jasmine flowers. Then, and he sees something like kind of like lurking down his hallway. Like at that point, what the heck?
Yes.
Like,
Okay.
get
The
it out of
jasmine
your
flowers.
house.
Then, if he was also smelling the jasmine flowers as well as the urine is when their mind is like, oh god, this is evil. The jasmine flowers is the Dybbuk trying to hide what it is, because that's very common. Because that.
Well, you know, she only gives the jasmine flowers to the boys.
Which is like everyone who owned it.
Yes, that's also very common.
No,
Like
girls
all
owned it
boys
too,
bought
but-
it.
Well, yeah. After I meant like when he was like given the box,
Yeah.
with, like to
Oh,
hold,
to his
hold on
family.
to.
That's
Yeah.
actually very common. Dybbuks are gendered. The gender of the person that became a Dybbuk stays. So there are stories of male Dybbuks being sexually violent, and there are stories of female Dybbuks being basically like crones and hags.
Yeah, and that's what this is. This is a
Yeah.
hag. Yeah.
So yeah, the idea that she had a preference for targeting men is absolutely normal.
I wish we had the journals of the second people who owned it.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Because it used to be online. They took the website down, though.
Yeah.
But they talked about how they just had so many electrical failures. They lost their Xboxes. All the computers in the house failed.
Yep.
We got to discuss.
They're all college students, too. So, like, all their essays were gone and everything.
Oh.
We got to discuss the selling on eBay first because this is just
Yeah.
like of all
This
the things
is-
you do.
Yeah, so poor Kevin has this box posted on eBay.
I want to say this is the reason why we get stereotyped so bad. Oh, this is dangerous. We'll sell it off to the Gentiles. Like, there's a reason why we get stereotyped.
I don't understand. I just don't understand. Like, I'm just
Oh,
gonna
it's a
sell
terrible
it.
idea.
Like,
I would have given that thing to my rep. I'd be like, this thing is bad. I need you to do something about this.
Gotta say, it's the longest eBay listing I've
It
ever
is,
seen.
yeah.
Oh, yeah,
It's
it's
lengthy.
insane.
Because he goes through his whole story on there.
for page 4. But he does go over like what it looks like. The measurements are 12.5 by 7.5 by 16.25. All the items that I originally found inside the cabinet are included in the sale and will be delivered with the cabinet. So it's just like, look at everything.
7.5, that's a deep box.
Yeah. But then you also have the second buyers because he sells it initially to what PJ said, to college students. So do you want to talk about the college students and what they went through?
Oh, that one.
So, yeah, there's a second eBay listing.
And I have to say, like, I like this too because I like how they copy and paste his original, like, and it's like, we're selling
for the
this.
full story, yeah.
They end up selling it too on eBay.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're listing, they're like, we bought this from the person above, the seller above. They have like a definition of Dybbuk there, and they're like, we didn't expect anything to happen from it. Let's see. Over the last week, some interesting, though possibly coincidental, items of note have come up. Firstly, I share a house with 6 other people, and we've been taking turns sleeping with the box in each of our rooms. 2 people are now complaining of burning eyes. One is listless and depleted of energy, and another became spontaneously sick. In retrospect, I would say it was allergies. A few days after these ongoing annoyances started, the outside air of our house was filled with small bugs for several hours. A Friday. Weird summer stuff? as he puts it.
Summer stuff?
Last night, Saturday, we discovered that the box, now located in the back corner of the house, had come mostly open, though it had been shut and seems unlikely that anyone could or would have touched it. Wednesday, September 10th, 2003. Though it seems impossible to prove that the box's direct cause of misfortune, we've definitely seen a tidal wave of bad luck. Oh, so we do have some of his journal entries here.
Yep, we do have some of them.
Several mice have died. Oh, wait, hold on. Nope. Strange odors now permeate the house. The dumpster out back overflows with trash and decay. One roommate suddenly got bronchitis, and I broke a finger. Several mice have died in the engine of one car, and more electronic devices seem to be dying every day. Xbox, toaster, TV, watches. I don't really want to talk about anything between September and January, so I'll just say I'm selling the box now for a couple of reasons. Around October 6th, I started feeling bad with trouble sleeping. Problem has persisted through today. I live alone now. And
everyone left him.
Yeah, I wonder why.
As of late, I noticed I've been replacing a lot of light bulbs, burnt out light bulbs, and getting many unusual car repairs. Transmission fluid was burned out of the reservoir, for example. I started seeing things, sort of like large vertical dark blurs in my peripheral vision. I smell something like juniper bushes or stingy ammonia in my garage often, and I have no idea what from. Most disturbingly, last Tuesday, 1/27/2004, my hair began to fall out.
That freaks me out.
Yeah. Today, Friday, it's about half gone. I'm in my early 20s. I got a clean blood test back from the doctors. Maybe it's stress-related. I don't know. Anyhow, for personal reasons, I very strongly do not want this box anymore. I hope there's someone on eBay that will take this thing off my hands. I would just throw it away in the woods or something, but I know there has been some interest in it in the past.
I still want to make some money off of this thing.
Yeah. That's the American way.
The American way. But his name was Losif Nitsky. Everyone calls him Joseph. But when that interview happened, like for the Paranormal Witness, a couple of the people like from that house would not come and talk about it. Mm-hmm. They were really freaked out, and they kept saying the original, the buyer, Joseph, would just sit like for hours in his room and like would just like type onto computer screens and like would stare at things, and it freaked him out. And so his eyes were red too, and he wasn't getting so he was like insomniac. So like they were creeped out, but everyone ended up moving out because they just couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah. So the idea of it physically hurting somebody that bad,
I don't think she likes partiers.
That
she wanted Kevin back.
That's the thing. It's like it affecting electronics is always one of those things I find kind of odd because that's
don't touch the Xbox
because that's not normally what one associates with it. Because they're not really a poltergeist. Because poltergeists infect an area.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Dybbuk's.
Well, in Kevin's story though, it broke like every single light bulb in the basement.
Yes, I was gonna say, but the bigger part of the story is always how it attaches to a single person. What happens to them? They no longer are able to sleep. They become low energy. Like the kid starts losing his hair. All these things would be something I'd fully expect because basically it's draining you.
Mm-hmm.
In a very real sense.
Yeah, he also linked it to a suicide, Kevin, the original owner.
Yeah.
I don't remember to whom.
Well, it was to hit one of his workers. Was it her husband?
Worker's husband, yeah.
Or was it her brother? But like then another person ended up committing suicide too. There were two suicides. That he think. And that thing I like about one article too from Input, which we haven't even gotten to yet, is the idea that, and Laura had kind of mentioned it in passing with the Crone of the Catskills, even if it is not a haunted something, like it's not a crone or a box in the case of this, we give it that power. So maybe we're not paying attention, but all of a sudden now that we have this box, oh my gosh, my car is broken. You may just have a crap car and you never realize how much money you're putting into it until now you are noticing those, because you're already primed to pay attention to that. Yeah. So if I were to call a hoax, I would say, people were starting to be coincidental about it. But after the college kids have it and they sell it to the next owner, Jason Haxton, who was the final owner for a very long time. And he had it he took care of it correctly and he put it away.
Yeah, at the end of Paranormal Witness, he said that he had it locked up and he will never tell anyone where it is.
Yeah, and he said his biggest worry was what happens in the future when he dies, like what happens. And so I thought that was interesting, and I had a lot of belief in him because he just seemed really nice. Now I'm wondering how much he's cashed in on this.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I think in the Paranormal Witness one, he basically said he went to the rabbi. He said, this is what I think is happening, this is what it is, and then the rabbi would go through the proper rituals to properly
rebind it.
Yeah. But he wanted to do it scientifically first.
Yes.
So, Jason Haxton buys it for $280 on eBay. And he was so proud to have bought it because he had seen it coming up a couple times, He opens it at his job. He talks about how when he opens it, computers start dying in his office that were working just fine before. Light bulbs were exploding. He does experience hives and welts from having touched the box. Yep. He did bring in scientists. He brought in paranormalists. He brought in Kabbalists too. So he brought in anybody he could think of. He brought in to look at this box because just like the Crone of the Catskills, a couple of these the things that go with this box don't make sense. Yes. almost all the components are here, but not all of them, or one thing doesn't make any sense as to why it's in the box.
Yeah.
So really his ultimate plan was to figure out what it was and how to fix it. That was his goal.
Yes.
He actually has a degree, right, PJ? What was he? It's in one of the articles. So he actually is of a scientific mind too.
I thought it was an anthropology degree.
Yeah, because he works in a museum.
Yeah.
So Jason Haxton is the director of the Museum of Osteopathic Medicine in Kirksville, Missouri, or was, and this was in 2011. So he was fascinated by the mysterious box, but he also really worked hard to try and downplay it, to scientifically understand it. He did a lot of scientific method on it, did a lot of studying, whatnot. So I do appreciate that about him. He again did bring in people to try and figure out that truth of it. He did write a book about it, but it does say here, for a time Haxton kept the box secure in an acacia wood arc lined with 24 karat gold and stashed it in his den to keep it subdued. And then it says, however, more recently, he's admitted that he ended up putting it into a military-grade shock-proof container buried somewhere where it is well hidden and won't be discovered. And that's where the paranormal witness kind of thing ended.
Yes.
Because he had gotten all the information from the rabbis. He had done what he was supposed to keep it safe. Because there are stories like how he not only rashes, but it affected his wife because the clothes she was wearing touched the box, and she touched the clothes, and then she got rashes from it. Mm-hmm. It was really affecting things. Wasn't there a story, too, about how there was some kind of shadow figure in his house and his son saw it?
I believe so.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I saw that.
Well, and this article doesn't really go into that. I think the input one does, but I remember he's sitting in his den with his son, and his son's like, "What is that, Dad?" And there's this black mass floating in a corner.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I do remember that.
So once he realized he couldn't really protect his family, he had to find a way to protect his family.
Yeah.
So then when I was doing my research, I learned that Zach Baggins bought it. And I already have mixed opinions about him because of that movie you made me watch.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of that movie is pretty... We're talking about Demon House. But a lot of that movie is pretty compelling. But the end, the quote-unquote, climax of the movie was so fake.
I hated every second of it.
So fake.
I was like, oh, the second that someone comes into his room, the
camera goes out of focus.
Wiggles. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Again, I have my issues with anyone who, does ghost hunting for money.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's the wrong kind of Baggins.
The fact that Zach Baggins is the one that has it, and then afterwards, Manus is saying that it was a hoax that he created. But then there's also him saying, "Oh, it was actually one of 10 boxes that."
Yeah, I have that pulled up right here. So, his first post says, "I'm the original creator of the story of the Dybbuk Box, which appeared as one of my eBay posts back in 2003. The idea that Dybbuk boxes have some kind of history prior to my story, and the idea that a Dybbuk box could contain anything other than a Dybbuk, along with any deviation to the type of contents I created to be found inside of a Dybbuk box, is laughable at best. How about this? If you or anyone else can find any reference to a Dybbuk box anywhere in history prior to my eBay post, I'll pay you $100,000 and tattoo your name on my forehead." And then, shortly after that, he says, "There were only 10 authentic and original Dybbuk boxes."
Yeah.
The term
he gave 2 to Zach Baggins, right? Or whatever.
Yeah, the term Dybbuk box was never used or known prior to 2001. I was the original owner. You may contact me and ask any questions you might have. Answers about Dybbuk boxes, my experience with them, or anything related from anyone else are probably a bunch of crap. And then later he says that, there's no such thing as a Dybbuk box and that he created the term. Then he says, because this interviewer from Input said, so is the whole backstory of the Holocaust survivor fake? And he says, quote, No, I'm not saying that. Let's see, end quote. But then he says that it did come from the Holocaust survivor, and they said that there's some kind of supernatural powers, and they used the term Dybbuk Box from where he just said he started, that whole story.
Well, and then later, because the article that I had given you guys from Input was an author who really was trying to uncover the truth of this box, and so he really talks to Manus for a very long time. He gets a lot of one-on-one conversations. He also spends time talking all over Facebook. And so the Facebook messages are all over the place. So it says, Manus messages me via Facebook to say he'd just gotten a call from Baggins. Not good, he writes, not happy. You won't believe the S that's happening now around me. Seriously, like I'm getting bombarded with the curse. And so then he lists the events that have happened to him in the last week, including his car breaking down, his girlfriend leaving him, her mother dying, and 2 of his friends passing away. I'm not going to go into the rest of the stuff that has occurred over the last 7 days, he adds, but it is striking, to say the least, and it keeps on coming. Despite all this, in a subsequent message, he refers to the original Dybbuk Box story he wrote as fictional. So I wonder if, I know Peach and I have been talking about this, Jack, before, like 2 days ago when we had been reading over the research.
Yeah.
Like, could he be suffering from some kind of like psychotic break?
Oh, yes,
you know,
absolutely.
because he's all over the place. It's true, it's not true. Yeah, my mom had that interview on Paranormal Witness, and like, you know, that was an award-winning, in my opinion, like an award-winning presentation. Then because she had a stroke, she can't fake that she can't talk, and like you can tell that she's learning how to use her mouth.
And he says she had no coaching or anything.
Yes. So you tell me that she's telling those stories. Then you have everything else.
And on top of that, and the reason why that's completely possible, nowadays, obviously, we talk more about mental illness. Mm-hmm. And there are times in the past where, you know, you would say someone was possessed instead of mentally ill.
Yeah.
But the two do seem to go together, especially when it comes to something like a Dybbuk. Because, okay, I have to be a little bit more specific here. When I say a Dybbuk clings to you, they don't cling to you, they cling to your soul.
Yeah.
So, any damage to the soul affects the body and mind. So, he had that Dybbuk for a while. Mm-hmm. And it was obviously bound to him pretty hard. Could it have affected his mind? Absolutely.
Well, that's why I kind of feel like that's where we're at. Like,
see, for me,
crazy.
it's more petty than that.
Oh, and
I just think he's a piece of garbage, and he sees other people succeeding and making money off of this, and he's just trying to discredit them by making all these different stories, and so casting all this doubt all over the place. Yeah,
well, and that's part of it too. You know, this box gets sold to Zach Baggins, and so Jason Haxton makes a really good something that no one mentions how much he got paid for it, but it's a lot. And that's after Jason wrote his own book about the Dybbuk Box, which also made money. So unlike Kevin Mannis, who sold this thing on eBay for I don't even know how much, those college kids, probably not a lot, everyone else is making some good money off of this. Mm-hmm. And so Zach Baggins, of course, puts it on TV, and it says, last year, the now 44-year-old Baggins opened the box on an episode of Ghost Adventures Quarantine. He supposedly heard it say Kevin, referencing Mannis, and evil, then heard a child's voice. No surprise. Children are scary.
Yes.
So then it says, the highlight of the episode, however, at least from the media standpoint, was security camera footage of Baggins and his friend, the musician Post Malone, touching the closed Dybbuk box prior to Baggins opening it. But even though Malone never touched the box, he was touching Baggins' shoulder, I believe is how it worked. But, the bad juju went over to Post Malone as well. So, again, make money off the TV show. Then there's a movie, of course, too, that Sam Raimi directed. But Kevin Mannis and Jason were both on there as, helpers to make that movie. So he had to have made some money off of that, because that was in 2012.
But judging by the trailer, a movie has zero relations to the actual event.
So PJ and I kind of are in the opinion that he's just, you said petty, I like that word.
Yeah.
Petty definitely sounds correct. Like I said, that being, it is not impossible.
I don't mean to be rude to your heritage, but he's angry because he didn't make enough money.
Again, there's a reason why that stereotype exists. I said that earlier. But I was going to say, it is possible, since a Dybbuk clings to the soul. It did cling to him, and obviously, if the Zach... I'm going to put a huge if here, because I'm not a fan of Zach Baggins at all. If what Zach Baggins said is correct, that it said his name, it was still attached to him, even though it was separated from him. And that is very Dybbuk.
And then talking about it even on Facebook and these emails, phone conversations with the writer of this article, he's having all these problems. And again, are our minds just primed to notice those coincidences of bad luck? Or is something else at play? I guess that's the question for this.
Yeah, I think as soon as you think something bad is happening, you're going to notice every little bad thing.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely human nature. That being said, there is centuries of lore about Dybbuk. And is it possible to bind a Dybbuk? Yes. It is not the correct way, and any rabbi will tell you what you want to do is remove it from the body of the possessed person. Again, possessed here in quotes. Attached person, I guess is a better term. And is to put the Dybbuk, that spirit, back into the cycle, send them into Gehenna, or to Kapahela. Again, and I apologize because my Hebrew is terrible.
Listen, sounds better than what I would have said.
The idea is you would want to send them back to the land of the dead, so that way the cycle can continue. Because a Dybbuk is basically stuck. They're stuck of their own devices, but they are stuck. So the idea is you want to get them unstuck. So sending them back to the land of the dead is ideal.
Yeah.
That usually requires like 10 people and a rabbi, and they are constantly in prayer for days. It sounded like Havilah had more than a little bit of knowledge of mysticism, because what they were doing and the time she was coming from, that and the time she did this in the 20s was a huge boom in spiritualism and mysticism.
Oh yeah.
Well, I love his story about that. Again, like when Manus like goes off the rails.
Yeah.
He says like there's 10 boxes because, and I'll just read it from here from the input article that I found. Yeah. It says. On Ghost Adventures Quarantine, Manus told another part of his ongoing ghost story. He'd given Baggins a second, smaller Dybbuk box, and on the show said there were a total of 10 boxes that were hidden around the globe. Manus explained that Havilah, along with a few other Jewish women, including someone named Sophie, summoned an evil spirit to help the Jews fight against the Nazis during the Holocaust, but they couldn't control it. That same spirit, Havilah believed, caused some of the 20th century's greatest disasters, including the Korean War. Knowing what they had done was wrong, Havilah eventually captured the Dybbuk and separated it into 10 Dybbuk boxes. If those boxes are ever brought together, evil will be unleashed like the likes of which the world has never seen.
Sounds like the Infinity Stones.
Yeah, exactly. Baggins now had 2 of them, while Manus had 6. The last 2, Manus claimed, were yet to be found. I'm like, I'm sorry, is this like... Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like he had like 1 and he's just like, I need to make more money on this. So I'm going to create a story about there being 10.
Yeah, it's insane. Like, and that's why, like, I want to believe that this is something otherworldly because it kind of showcased the idea of the supernatural. Mm-hmm. But, like, he just
makes it so idiotic.
Yeah.
It's that weird thing when it comes to a lot of paranormal stories is if you remove one link of the chain, is the chain inherently broken? Or is the chain actually made better by removing a weak link? Mm-hmm. When you take Manus' stories out, Manus out of it, especially after he sold the box initially, the story still seems to keep a normal flow until you get to Zach Baggins. And again,
one of the things that happened to Zach were very comparative to what happened to Joseph or Loseph, I guess is Chris, but everyone called him Joseph. Well, they all call him Loseph or Joseph. I mean, and to Jason, like they all have very similar stories.
Oh yeah.
So is he cashing in? Is he angry? Is he having mental disease or some kind of issue because of having been stuck with the Dybbuk all this time? I don't know. Like I've never talked to this dude, but
like I said, the actual again. When I look at it from, a Kabbalistic side of things and from the Jewish side of things, Dybbuks are real. They're terrifying. They are bad. Accidentally pulling a Dybbuk out when you're experimenting with spiritualism is a very real worry.
Yeah.
And anyone who knows a little bit of Kabbalah would try to come up with a solution that is more long-term. And in this case, binding it into a sealable object makes sense. And or
into 10 boxes to help fight the Nazis.
That one made 0 sense because wasn't the initial thing like I was gonna say initially they said they were doing the seance in like 20 something.
It was in Spain. It was after because seances were like all the rage back in like the 30s and 40s. But Havilah's real life story is really depressing. Like she lost her entire family to the Nazis. And the only reason that she survived is because she escaped with a couple of Jewish friends to Spain. Yeah. But it was in Spain where they, again, seances were so they did a seance, and that's when all this happened.
Yeah. So, I mean...
Well, don't forget, he still claims that it's fictional, too.
Yes.
Even though there are 10 boxes.
His story is
wacky.
So
what we should do is go find that granddaughter and talk to her about Havilah.
That would be the one, yes. A Kabbalistic solution would be to try to bind it, which is what a lot of those things seem like.
Well, it's something that we've mentioned too on our Corona the Catskills, PJ. The idea that where that thing was found was where a lot of kids would go and like practice and dabble in the dark arts. So it's off the beaten track in the Catskills. So regardless of whether you know what you're doing or not, sometimes you can unleash something. You know, there's people who believe and don't believe in the Ouija board, but when kids are stupid, they do stupid stuff. And like, so they'll play with the Ouija board or they'll try to do a spell. Are you inviting something in then? So even if this was fictional and Kevin did make it just to make money off of eBay, it's a terrible way to do it. Just like there are other ways to make money. But if that were the case, like, you still are putting things in this box. You're still putting a prayer on this box.
And why didn't Joseph and all those guys like monetize off of this? You know?
Well, Jason did monetize off it by making a novel about it.
Yeah.
And then he sold the box.
By quite a while.
But Jason was the museum guy, though, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking about the middle group, all the college kids.
All the college kids. Oh, Joseph, yeah.
Joseph, yeah. Like, none of them, like, have said anything about this that we could find.
No, everyone left him.
Yeah.
He's all alone.
God. But I was going to say, 'cause, I mean, looking at it from a Kabbalistic standpoint, and if anyone listening to this knows more about Kabbalah than me, I absolutely encourage you to send us an email where I'm wrong.
At gamesoboard.
At gmail.com.
Because,
or just go to gamesoverboard.com and hit contact us.
Yes. Yeah. Because I can say what some of these are for. I don't think it matters that they were weak pennies dating to those years specifically. The fact that it was 2 pennies, that is long running.
Don't put on the eyeballs when someone dies. Yeah.
That's very old. It's passage into the afterlife.
Yeah, pay Karen.
The 2 locks of hair, if I had to guess, was probably Havila's hair. And that's because as the summoner, it was technically intrinsically bound to her. So by using her hair, basically became like a lure. And
why 2 locks of hair, not 1? Could Sophie's hair be in there? There's a person
also,
named Sophie.
I was going to say, that could have been the other person that was there doing the seance with her.
Amanda says it's just 2 of his friends, and they fessed up to it.
Of course.
Yep.
A dried rosebud, that's
We can check harder. That with DNA. Let's go.
That's true.
That'd be an easy check, yeah.
The 2 next ones, the candlestick and the golden wine cup. Those are used constantly throughout rituals. Cups and candlesticks are, especially candles. And because there was also sealed wax on it. One of them said that
the candlestick could also be used to kill somebody in the kitchen in the conservatory. Yes, sorry, to make a reference to Clue there.
Zach Baggins did it.
Of course, I knew it. I knew it. Kevin says he did it, but he didn't.
A granite sculpture with the word shalom on it, again, is probably a lot like the golem in that it's designed to, whatever is stuck in there is keeping it stuck in there. It's basically acting as a defender.
I like how it says shalom.
Yeah.
Not goodbye.
Shalom is both home.
I know.
And like I said, the Shema is one of the most important prayers. Like, think about it, if you have a Christian or a Catholic exorcism, they say the Lord's Prayer multiple times.
Uh-huh.
Or you just say litany of Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee, blessed art thou amongst women, and blah, 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 blah,
yes,
blah. Yeah.
That'd be another. It's very similar. This is literally divine word. So, again, from a Kabbalistic standpoint, this makes sense of you are trying to bind something that is not technically fully
My
dead. My
question is, why can't I see the ghost in there?
Because you're not looking for the dark spot. And you're not Kevin, since apparently it prefers men over women.
Yeah.
What a letdown.
But yeah, so like I said, from a Kabbalistic standpoint, it definitely sounds like someone who knew a little bit, at least enough to try to do something like this.
It's very pretty looking.
It is.
Like
it's a really cool wine cabinet.
And to then put.
And if it's a wine cabinet, I'm sorry, who doesn't have more than that in terms of wine? Because it's like
2 bottles, maybe 3.
Yeah. That's not even enough for a party.
Normally, it wouldn't be your full bottle. It'd be like a decanter of wine and a couple of cups.
Listen, that's not enough for a party.
It's not really designed for a party. It's more for, but yes.
For a party. Anyway, so our overall question then, we went over everything. The question is, do we think it's real or not, and why? I make fun of you if you say I'm in the middle. You gotta choose a side.
This is a hard one. This is harder than Corona the Catskills.
It is
to determine.
So I'm gonna start with you, PJ, because you said it's hard.
Why? I believe it not because of Manus. Well, actually, kind of because of him. Because he's so wishy-washy and he won't stick with one story. That makes me think he's either A, trying to discredit everyone else, or B, he doesn't like the way people think of him, now that he's, like, claiming that, like, I had a haunted box, and, like, he's getting made fun of for it or something. So,
I also, I mean, if it is a haunted box, and your immediate response, I'm going to give it to my mother, he should be beat.
So,
worst Jewish son ever.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I want, like, those are some big reasons right there that lead me to believing it and not believing him.
How about you, Jack?
I think the way everything's set up, to me, says the box, the way it was designed, and the Kabbalistic tradition that was used in binding whatever was in there, absolutely makes perfect sense to me. It seems like what someone who knows a little bit would try to do if they were back up against a wall, in some case like something at Dybbuk. I think Manus's early story, before he was trying to cash in on it, is closer to what I think is actually happening, as opposed to what it became. I start questioning the story after the guy who wrote the book.
Yeah, after Paranormal Witness happened.
After Paranormal Witness is when I start kind of losing a lot of faith in stuff, just because it then seems more commercialized and capitalized, like you actually have an inherent financial incentive to lie. Whereas up to that point, there's been no incentive to lie. That's why I think it's like, even if it's not an actual Dybbuk that these people are being targeted by...
Must be something spiritual.
Something spiritual is going on, and a lot of bad things are happening to people that would normally by themselves not be that interesting until they're kind of all piled up. And the fact that this is so close to a lot of terrible things is definitely makes me lean towards it. It could easily be a place where Dybbuk was sealed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting for me, like looking at this and thinking about it, because I really believed that it was a box. Like it was a box. Yeah, it's definitely a box.
Oh, I mean,
yes,
we can see that.
I wouldn't. I really believed in it, especially when I saw the episode of Paranormal Witness, because of the life that PJ and I have lived in this house. I'm a little more open to this kind of stuff now. Yeah. However, for me, I would like a rabbi to chime in, Yes. Jason mentions that a rabbi was called to help him put it, and keep it safe and to kind of lock it back up. But if that were the case, wouldn't it be safe? And why would you then sell it to Zach Baggins? Mm-hmm. If it was all safe, why would you do that? And if it was a real rabbi, wouldn't they take it and put it somewhere safe? Because that's something that, like a Catholic priest, I feel like that's what they would do, right? Yeah. They would take that away for you. So I'm skeptical now, because I think about what happened in our house and what would be done for protection. So I don't think it is real, but I think something was imbued upon it. I think once you start putting that like mass belief in something, it becomes real, and it allows something to attach itself onto the box. So I think initially it wasn't real, but I think now it is.
So it became less of a Dybbuk and more of a tulpa.
Yeah.
Where,
do you know what?
Or even just the idea of like, you believe in something so much that you start experiencing things, even though they're not. Yeah, it's not real, Well,
actually,
placebo effect kind of things.
The power. Actually, it's called the power of luck on the positive side. If you just believe you're good at something, even though you suck at it, you're better at it because you remove that part of your brain that makes you question, "Can I do this?" So it's called the power of luck. You can also go the negative way. The power of unluck. I'm not sure what you would call it, but it's that same kind of mentality.
Well, it's why like stupid people are significantly more confident than intelligent people and things like that. It's same kind of idea there.
Yeah. So and as Laura said, you can imbue a power, like an energy, into something, you know. So I don't know. I feel like maybe it was fake. Although now that I'm thinking about it, if his plan was to make money off of this, if that was the original goal of this, then why did he sell it on eBay? And why didn't he make more of these Dybbuk boxes? Yeah. Like if you're selling a haunted item,
and then why did he try to discredit it later?
You get your butt on Etsy and you make a whole bunch of them.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like
so, none of this makes sense.
Maybe not that now I'm like, no, maybe it is real because he wanted to get rid of it.
Like I said, I
want the rabbi to come.
Where there's a chain here, and there's a couple of links that are weird. Like I said, when you remove Manus from it, the chain is really solid.
Yeah, or if you follow, like you said, if you follow the chain up to a certain point, then it gets twisted.
Yeah.
And everything after that just doesn't make sense. Yeah. Because that's the moment when people started to get famous from it and started to make money from it.
Yeah, because like I said, after Paranormal Witness, before Paranormal Witness, it was just like a curio online.
It was just something that was being sold on eBay, really, yeah.
And there's some people online talking about this idea. And after Paranormal Witness became really famous, and that's where, it almost like after that point, it became famous enough that everyone's like, oh, well, we can start making money on this.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think...
Because no one wrote a book on it until after that show. No one made a movie on it until after that show.
I think greed is overshadowing what could have been a very... What is a much more complete story. Greed is starting to corrupt it.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Because like I said, the actual... the Dybbuk itself is ancient. So if... I'm glad
What's a Kezelum? Do you know what a Kezelum is? If I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Kezelum.
Because a Dybbuk and a Kezelum. Yeah, because like that's never mentioned again. Really, is that when he initially buys it in his eBay article, he mentions that
he talks about it in the Paranormal Witness episode too.
Yeah, a Dybbuk and a
it's been
Kezelum.
years since I've seen that episode, but it's something along the lines of like boogeyman and the Jewish folk. At least that's how he talks about it.
If there are like two things in there, when the girl asked her,
there are two things in there: a Dybbuk and a Kezelum.
Would spit 3 times through her fingers and say a Dybbuk and a Kezelum. So I just thought those like, and then you never hear about that ever again. You just hear about the hag.
Yeah, that is not a...
You type in Kezelum and it just goes back to Dybbuk.
Yeah, so it's a Dybbuk. The end.
Yeah, that's... I'm not sure, honestly. I think it's another kind of like...
word for it?
I think Kezelum is probably far more closer to the boogeyman, whereas the Dybbuk is something that's much more steeped in history.
Oh, well... That was just one random thought I had there.
Yeah.
So we have, so overall we think it's real-ish.
Yes.
Just like you're Jewish, since you like your bacon.
Huh.
Oh, I probably should mention that, I'm Catholic and you're Jewish, but, I celebrate all of the holy days because our family history was Jewish, Our family had to change to Catholicism for safety. We're talking about World War II, so I understand Havila. We lost almost all of our family to concentration camps, actually. Whoever didn't move to America died in the camps, except for our great-great-uncle.
And even on our mother's side, those that were back in Germany... That was the Jewish line of the family. That just disappears.
Yep, it's gone. So you identify one way, I identify a different way, but that's okay. We still have, I have my Hanukkah set out ready for you?
Yes.
Yes.
And whereas mine is more like, I associate more with the Jewish side of stuff, even though I'm a terrible practicing Jew.
Yeah, you like to eat those scallops with the bacon wrapped around it.
I also don't go to synagogue like I should.
That's okay. Do we have a synagogue in the area?
Not particularly close, but there is one. But more like, to me, it's just like, it's the beliefs that makes more sense to me.
I got you.
So, and also I still follow more out of tradition and out of, what's what I'm looking for, like...
Heritage,
and also in memory of, because like I said, both lines of our family lost a lot of people, so it's...
Well, our great uncle's wristband, or armband, is on display in the Holocaust Museum, so... All right, well, that was sad. Let's talk about happy.
Yes.
So we agree-ish that it's real-ish.
Yes.
So thank you for being on. And as a guest, my brother.
Thank you.
From the same mother.
And father.
Oh, yeah, that's true, yeah. Same.
we are actually blood siblings. We are actually correct siblings.
What is happening right now?
No, remember, I've a long time ago decided that I've been traded by accident. I'm not actually related to you. You've heard my story about how I'm a Kennedy.
Nose says
countless
otherwise.
times.
I'm a Kennedy, yes.
Your nose says otherwise.
That's hurtful, but it's true. My nose is my nose. Anyway.
You're not as bad as our
Although,
aunt.
if you look at a picture of Eli, there is no question that is mine. He looks just like me. I'm so
And your
proud.
daughter acts just like you. It makes me very happy.
She looks like you, too.
She does, but she has your coloring.
Yeah.
But Eli, he's all mine. That is, I don't know where your genes are in that, but they're not there.
They were there when he was a baby. He looked like me. No,
That was
not
it.
anymore.
Yeah, you get Eli, or Alex, I mean. So we need to get some ideas for our next Well House
I have an
exorcism.
idea.
What is your idea?
Amityville.
No.
If we're doing famous ones, and if we want to really hate on one, because there's some really good, creepy stuff that's real that happened there. And then there's a crap ton of really bad, creepy stuff. It's still creepy, but it's bad. And the Warrens are there, so we can bring in the Warrens and talk about them.
Listen.
Or we just do an episode on the Warrens, which is also a whole mess right there.
That is a
Ruining
can of worms.
Catholicism, one person at a time, yeah. I just want this to be like haunted places and objects close to home. So like we do something Appalachian maybe, like that kind of thing, like something closer, something
Does it have to just be
interesting.
haunted?
What are you thinking?
I was gonna say, if we're gonna do Appalachian, we could do a deep dive into the Mothman.
Get out of here.
I've been trying to get a cryptid episode for a while.
No.
Fair.
I will do my own research, not on a microfiche, and I will come up with a great idea.
I'm just saying, when there are reports of the same flying creature 3 states away in one weekend, word doesn't travel that fast back when we were in the colonies.
In the colonies.
Something was seen.
No.
Joseph Bonaparte saw it and wrote about it in his diary.
We're not doing the Jersey Devil either, okay? It's not happening. It's not happening. I will think of something. And if I can't land on something...
Amityville.
No, if I can't land something good, I will consider us the Warrens or Amityville for like a week when I'm just tired and I'm just going to sit here and I'll let you guest host. But this is mine, okay?
As you glare at us.
I mean, there's a lot of local lore.
I know.
There's the Eastern State Penitentiary. There's Penhurst.
Did you say Penitentiary?
Penitentiary.
Okay, penitentiary. Penitentiary.
Okay. There's Penhurst. There's Katie's Church.
Penhurst is a good one to do. Katie's Church is all fake, but we can
totally
totally
do
do that.
But we can still talk about it,
Yeah.
yeah. Because I had some fun experiences
Me
there.
too, with my friend, yeah.
And also, I learned something fascinating about, I was going to say, if we're cutting this, because this is where...
We could also do a discussion about Silent Hill.
Oh, yeah.
I.e. Centralia. Someone actually referenced that. Oh, she was on hit my podcast
What
thing.
are you doing?
I'm sorry, I got excited. On last podcast on the left, they mentioned it in one of the things I was listening to. They said, isn't Silent Hill like literally like in Pennsylvania somewhere? Oh yeah, there's Silent
It's
Hill.
worldwide. Scientists come from all over the world.
I know. So we could discuss
I was
that.
going to say, Centralia, the story of how humans are stupid.
Uh-huh.
And now everyone's afraid of it because humans are stupid.
But really, there's not a lot to
It's
talk
not really
about there.
scary. When you actually divorce the whole someone turned into Silent Hill, it's just a colossal story of people who had this
Oopsies.
really... What?
Oopsies.
Yeah, I was going to say public planning gone horribly awry and stupid people making stupider decisions.
You have to like
Oopsies.
really travel to see the smoke coming out of the ground now too. We were just there over the summer. And
it's also really hard to see it in the summer anyway. And it's actually burned so far down the coal seam that it's...
Yeah. You have to travel really far west. Like we went pretty far out and didn't get to it. And we saw another person hiking around. They're like, yeah, it's way out there.
It's because it's farther up the coal seam.
Yeah, it's just traveled. Anyways.
The problem is we're not sure if it's going to get to the other coal seam.
Dun,
Are we going to talk about fish attacks?
dun, dun. No, there's no. Good Lord. All right, so I will figure it out. For now, though, thank you for joining us. This has been lovely.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for listening. Please join us. Come to our website, gamesoverboard.com. Email us at gamesoboard@gmail.com. Listen to our other podcast, Danger and Dice, a live play D&D podcast where we just get into all kinds of mischief. And Games Overboard, where we review board games and talk about the stories they tell.
You can also hop on Facebook and like us and share our Facebook page, Games Overboard. Have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No.
Oh.
Get shalom. Shalom.
Shalom.
Don't you say those bad words on here. I can speak enough.
It's not a swear word. It's not a nice word.